Hi there, my name's Brendan Sutton and I'm the Sales and Marketing Manager at Viking Roofspec. Today I'm going to be talking about re-roofing of low slope, in particular membrane roofs. I'll go through the options that can fulfill your re-roofing objectives, whether you're trying to reduce heat buildup, add insulation, do you want to collect potable water, or maybe just change the roof colour. If you're working on a refurbishment project, you may find this useful. We'll start by covering the main clauses of the building code that are pertinent to helping decide whether a whole roof assembly needs to be pulled down and replaced, or if the existing roof can be overlaid. We'll talk about sensible decision making, about giving the building owner all of the relevant facts to consider so that he or she can make an informed decision. And for the main part of this presentation, we'll cover the variety of re-roofing overlay methods available. When the need for a re-roof arises, it's usually more than 20 years after the original installation. And that roof is usually sloped at less than the current E2 AS1 minimum pitch requirements, and creating those falls to those requirements can be problematic. But one of the key points for this presentation is that this potentially may not be a hurdle for achieving a successful re-roof. Let's look at the building code and the pertinent clauses, and we'll start with B2, durability. So if a roof has lasted a minimum of 15 years and is still fit for purpose up to that point, then for the most part it has fulfilled its obligations under the durability clause of the building code. What about E2, external moisture? If a roof prevents external moisture from entering the building, while at the same time resists the accumulation of moisture from the outside, in other words, ponding, then it too has fulfilled its obligations under the code. So an existing roof fulfilling these building code requirements probably won't need a total replacement. But some of the rules around re-roofing can be a little ambiguous and down to interpretation. So if you as the architect and or the building owner are still a little unsure, then you can visit Schedule 1 of the Building Act, which is found on MBIE's website. Or better still, go down to your local council and get their official position on what you're trying to achieve, because at the end of the day, they are the ultimate authority. Which is quite a good segue to this next slide, which is about making sensible decisions as to whether to rebuild a roof from scratch or whether an overlay can take place. So my point is not about cutting corners. It's actually about being smart. It's about minimizing unnecessary waste, about giving the local landfill a bit of a break, and the same for the local forests. If you choose to go down the overlay path, it's certainly about minimizing cost. And I'm not just talking about compliance costs. I'm talking about materials costs. We're talking about shrink wrap, talking about churn, which is another name for the relocation of people, whether it be residential or in a commercial situation. Churn is a very, very expensive outlay. But one thing that has to be said, if the decision is made to do an overlay as opposed to ripping down a roof and starting again, then this must result in the long-term durability of the roof having not been compromised. So if an old roof does not meet the previously mentioned requirements of the building code, so let's say, for example, it has rotten joists in some areas, or it may sag badly, causing ponding, then it's just not compliant. It needs to be ripped off and fully replaced. So to use a more technical term, it requires restricted building works, which is council consentable. Before an overlay can actually take place, the existing substrate must be deemed to be solid. So this may involve some invasive testing, especially if it's a plywood substrate. So inspections in the gutters in particular should take place. It also needs to be, the existing membrane needs to be well bonded to that substrate. And this is where Viking Roofspec and its approved applicators can be helpful in reporting on the condition of that roof and can offer some advice before the building owner makes a decision as to he or she wants to do. This picture is of the same roof from the previous slide after it's been given a birthday without having to have been fully rebuilt. So in this case, the refurbishment came in the form of a EnviroClad overlay, which came with a 20-year product warranty. Let's look at some re-roofing situations. So in this first instance, a roof may have ticked the building code boxes that we talked about earlier. So that the substrate's solid, it's not leaking, but the membrane is starting to detach. So it would be irresponsible to install over the top of a loose membrane. So in this instance, the removal of the existing membrane and replacement with a comparable material would be appropriate. And that can take place without having to repitch the substrate. There are several options available for overlaying over existing membranes. The first is the simplest, and that's merely by overlaying straight over the top. So in this instance, the membrane supplier will have informed you as to which membranes are compatible to go over the top, and then the applicator installs the materials as per the supplier's specifications, which should always be to best practice. This next method involves installing over old bituminous roofs, which, as some of you may know, are not compatible with traditional solvent-based adhesives that are used to apply single-ply membranes. However, an overlay can still be achieved with what's called a fleece-backed membrane. So in this case, it's our EnviroClad FBS, which has a factory-applied fleece on its underside. The adhesive used is a specialized two-part urethane system which beds itself into the fleece, creating a critical bond between the old roof and the membrane. An alternative method is simply to reprime the old roof with a bituminous primer and then torch apply a new modified bitumen membrane cap sheet over the top. This next overlay method eliminates the need for adhesives, so the installation can take place in adverse weather conditions. It's called Rhino-Bond technology. The process involves fastening of TPO-coated metal washers, or plates if you will, in a 600 by 600 millimeter grid onto the old roof. Our EnviroClad membrane is then loose laid over the top of these plates, and then the applicator uses a specialized machine called a Rhino-Bond induction welder to secure the membrane to these plates. It very cleverly does this without penetrating the membrane. This image shows the base of the Rhino induction machine positioned above the plate, and then it emits an electromagnetic charge down through the surface, which basically fuses or welds the underside of the membrane to the top of the TPO-coated washers, effectively anchoring the membrane to the roof. So this slide shows an EnviroClad re-roof overlay completed using the Rhino-Bond method. It also shows our TPO weldable walkways with their signature tread plate pattern. Next, we talk about warm roof overlay. So if you've had, for example, roof cavity ventilation challenges, or you wish to add extra insulation to the roof, then the warm roof overlay approach works superbly. This involves installing rigid foam insulation panels, in our case, polyiso board, on top of an existing flat roof before laying membrane on top of that. So this is a featherweight addition to the roof, but adds decades to its life without having to rebuild it. The same covering can be made on long-run steel roofs, shown in this photo where fingers of foam are cut and installed in the troughs before another complete layer is installed on top, and then the membrane, of course, is installed on top of that. To create extra fall, tapered board can be used as well. So this is actually the finished roof of the photo shown earlier of the long run steel overlay, where the whole roof assembly, including the weight of the steel tray, is just 14 kilograms per square metre, which is well below the 25 kilograms per square metre threshold, above which a roof may require some extra engineering for support. So in summary, we've covered the pertinent clauses from the building code which assist in determining whether a complete roof assembly needs to be rebuilt or not. We've then talked about using this information plus some further substrate investigation to make some sensible decisions. And then we've gone through several re-roofing options available to your client which won't break the bank while still maintaining the long-term integrity of the building. So I hope you found this useful. For further information, contact us at Viking Roofspec on 0800 729 799 or info@vikingroofspec.co.nz. In the interim, stay safe and thanks for watching.